Prabhuji, you want to start, Prabhuji?
Okay, we can start.
Thank you.
Should we begin?
Yes, Prabhuji, we can start. Thank you. The children will start joining in as you say the prayers. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, let us begin our session with standard prayers. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Presthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamin Nidinamine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschati Deshatarine जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे Hare Krishna. So we welcome all of you for this week's Mahabharat discussion. If you remember, last week we discussed about the history of Bhishma, how Shantanu was cursed to come down. There was this king called Mahavisha who came down on earth by a curse from Brahma. He became known as Shantanu on earth, the son of a king called Pratipa. And how Shantanu married Ganga Devi and he got 8 sons. But Ganga Devi had put a condition that you shouldn't object to anything that I do. So as soon as a child was born, Ganga Devi would throw the child into the river Ganga and kill them. So in this way, 7 children, one after the other, were killed. And the 8th child happened to be a person named Devavrata, who became later known as Bhishma. So Devavrata, how he became Bhishma? Because Shantanu wanted to marry another queen, another girl named Satyavati. And her father had laid down certain conditions that Bhishma shouldn't become the king. Satyavati's son, after marrying Shantanu, should become the king. So therefore, Bhishma took a vow that he won't take up the royal position as the king and he won't marry also, so that he won't have any children who will later become king. So in this way, Bhishma satisfied his father, fulfilled his desire, and allowed Shantanu to marry Satyavati. We also saw how Bhishma was one of those 8 Vasus who were cursed by Vasishta Muni in the heavenly planets, and how they requested Ganga to become their mother. So that's another story, how they came down. 2 separate incidents, how Shantanu came down by Brahmaji's curse and how the Ashtavasus came down through Vasishta Muni's curse, and they both became father and children, and Ganga Devi became their mother. So in this way, Bhishma was trained. Ganga Devi took Bhishma to the heavenly planets and trained him in all the various skills and arts under various experts like Brihaspati, Parashuram, Markandeya Rishi. In this way, Bhishma became a very well-known scholar and expert warrior who became very powerful and became qualified to become the king. But then, as we saw, he couldn't become the king. He took a vow that he won't become the king. Now, Shantanu married Satyavati and they had 2 sons. We saw that also last time, Chitrangada and Vichitravirya. Chitrangada became the king after Shantanu and he was quite popular among the subjects. But there was this one Gandharva named, another Gandharva, whose name was also Chitrangada. And he felt envious of the earthly Chitrangada. And he said, how can another Chitrangada become more famous than me when I am still living? So in this way, he challenged the king Chitrangada for a fight, and in that fight, the Gandharva Chitrangada killed Shantanu's son Chitrangada. So then the next son, Vichitravirya, became the king. And he had to marry, right? As you grow up, become an adult, they had to marry certain other princesses. So Bhishma decided that he will do something for his younger brother. As we saw last time, Bhishma's promise was to remain loyal to the king, loyal to the king of Hastinapur. Always keep the kingdom of Hastinapur secure and protect Hastinapur from enemies. So as duty bound towards the throne of Hastinapur, he thought, let me do something for my younger brother Vichitravirya. Let me arrange for his marriage. So then he heard one day that there was this king called Kingdom of Kashi. The king of Kashi had arranged a Swayamvar ceremony for his 3 daughters. Let me show the slide. So this king of Kashi had 3 daughters whose names were Amba, Ambika, and Ambalika. So they were all qualified young princesses, and a Swayamvar was arranged by their father. So what is a Swayamvar? Swayamvar means several kings and princesses are invited for this marriage ceremony, and there is a contest. Oftentimes there is a contest, some match, and the kings or the princes have to prove their skills and talents, and in this way they have to win the contest, and in this way they will win over the princess. So that is called a Swayamvar. So the princess, the girl, has the right to choose whom to marry. And she was not forced to marry anyone. So she puts the condition, these are the conditions I want to be fulfilled by the kings. And whoever fulfills it in the best possible manner, the girl can choose that boy, that prince as the husband. So in this way, the king had arranged a certain kind of Swayamvar, and all these kings from various parts of the country had arrived to participate in this Swayamvar and win over the girls. So Bhishma also heard this Swayamvar function, and he heard about the 3 girls of the king. So he thought, okay, I will get all 3 of them and hand them over to my younger brother Vichitravirya, who is still unmarried. So he can marry all 3 of them. So in this way, Bhishma went to this capital of Kashi, city of Kashi, with his army and other associates. And he saw the Swayamvar was arranged nicely and all these kings were assembled there. So Bhishma didn't care. He thought there is no point in participating in this Swayamvar. I will simply kidnap all 3 of them and take them away. Let me see who is going to stop me. So Bhishma was quite powerful. So he was quite confident that even if someone opposes me, even if someone challenges me, I will handle all of them. So in this way, Bhishma entered like a royal, very powerful lion entering a forest with a lot of animals. So he just entered there and he saw everything. He examined everyone and he thought, okay, good idea. Let me just take all 3 of them. And I'll just take them to Hastinapur. That's it. Period. So he just, that's what he did. He barged in, kidnapped all three of them, and took them on his chariot and started moving. So all the other kings and princes who had arrived there, they were taken by surprise. They never expected such a thing will happen, because they thought there will be a match and contest and all those things, formal announcement will be made, and one by one, each one of them will come and participate. Like you remember how Draupadi Swayamvar happened, right? All those kings came and tried to shoot the fish through the reflection. And finally Arjun won Draupadi. So something similar they expected. But Bhishma didn't give any chance to any of them. He just kidnapped all three of them and then took them on his chariot and started running. So when this happened, they thought, let us fight. How can Bhishma do like this? So this is also common. Even if you remember Rukmini's Swayamvar ceremony, all those kings had come and they were waiting for a Swayamvar, and Krishna comes there and just kidnaps Rukmini and went away, and there was a fight. So this is common in Kshatriya marriages, Swayamvar and fight and battles. They come with big dreams, but they sometimes end up in a bloody battle and many people are killed. So when they saw Bhishma carrying away the princess, they challenged him, started running behind him. So Bhishma quite easily, first he dodged them. He thought, I won't fight with anyone. But then he saw that these people are raining down arrows upon him. So he stopped, took up his bow and arrow, and started releasing thousands of arrows against all of them combined. And within a matter of few minutes, he defeated all of them and even killed some of them. So when these kings and princes saw that, we are losing our lives and losing our soldiers, they thought, at least we don't want to kill ourselves. Let us run away from this place. So in this way, many of them fled for their lives, except one person. Who was he? His name was a king named Shalva. So Shalva happened to be a very powerful king. So he challenged Bhishma. He said, wait, how can you kidnap all three of them? So Bhishma and Shalva also fought for quite some time. There was a furious battle between two of them. But again, Bhishma very easily overpowered Shalva. But he didn't kill him. He spared his life. So in the Shalva also returned back. And Bhishma then safely carried all three princes and came to Hastinapur. And he was making arrangements for marrying them to Vichitravirya. That was the whole idea behind kidnapping them. He didn't want to marry. He had already taken a vow that he won't marry, but he wanted to hand all these princesses to Vichitravirya. So when they came to Hastinapur, all these three girls, one of them, the eldest one, whose name was Amba. So their names were Amba, Ambika, and Ambalika. The eldest one was Amba. Amba approached Bhishma and said, look, you know what? There is a problem. I was already going to marry Shalva in the Swayamvar ceremony. I had already given my heart to him. I loved him. And I wanted to marry him. And he also wanted to marry me. And we never expected that you are going to come in like this and kidnap all three of us. So please allow me to go back and let me marry Shalva. So Bhishma heard this and he thought, okay, there's a genuine problem here. So let me consult with my superiors in the kingdom. So he consulted with other Brahmanas and other priests and the ministers, and they all suggested, yes, if Amba has already decided to marry Shalva and Shalva has also wanted to marry Amba, then let her go back. Why unnecessarily force her to marry Vichitravirya? So let her go back. So in this way, Bhishma sent Amba back to her kingdom Kashi. Actually, he sent her back to Shalva, along with some assistants and a few other people. So Amba went to Shalva and told him, you know what? Although Bhishma kidnapped me, but I told him that I wanted to marry you. So I am here, uh, eager to marry you. So please, let us come together in marriage. But Shalva said, how can I marry you? Now, I was defeated by Bhishma, insulted by him. I cannot accept you now. It is too late. Moreover, Bhishma has touched you. If some other man has touched you, I cannot accept you now. So when Amba heard this, she was devastated. She said, how can this happen? I have given my heart to him and he is rejecting me. What should I do now? So she thought, let me go back to Bhishma. So she came back to Hastinapur and approached Bhishma again. And Bhishma says, so she tells Bhishma, look, Shalva is not ready to accept me because he says you have kidnapped me. But Bhishma said, but I cannot accept you. I have taken a vow of celibacy, brahmacharya. So Amba said, I don't care about all those vows. Because you have kidnapped me and you have touched me, now you have to marry. Please marry me. Otherwise, where will I go? So Bhishma says, but how can I do that? I have taken a vow for lifelong celibacy. So in this way, Bhishma says, you go back to your father, to Kashi, and he will take you. Right? And father is always, the parents will always accept you, no matter what your condition is. So why don't you go back to your father? He will arrange some marriage for you. But Amba says, no. How can I go back to my father's kingdom? That will be a big insult, humiliation for me. I can never go back. Either you accept me or I will decide what to do. So Bhishma says, I cannot accept you now. If you have already given your heart to someone else, how can we accept you? So this was Amba's confusion. Both of them rejected her. Shalva rejected her. Hastinapur, Bhishma also rejected her. And she felt Bhishma is the cause of my problem. If he wouldn't have kidnapped me, my life would have been peaceful. But this guy came inside and kidnapped me and spoiled my whole life. Who will marry me? So Amba thought of revenge. I have to take revenge against Bhishma. I have to kill him. But as a woman, she cannot kill him. So she thought, let me practice some tapasya. Let me practice austerities. So this is a standard method of becoming powerful. In fact, this is the right method of becoming powerful. You practice tapasya. You worship certain gods and goddesses, acquire powers. And in this way, you become powerful. So tapasya or austerity means you voluntarily accept certain inconveniences. Like say, for example, fasting, which is an inconvenience. And you do meditation, you do some ritual, which are all recommended processes to worship someone and please that person and acquire certain powers and fulfill your desires. So those who practice austerities, those who practice tapasya, the recommended way, and do it for a consistent long period of time, they will come out very powerful, physically, mentally also. Like for example, if someone wants to practice, become a good sports person, he has to follow a strict regimen, strict diet, strict exercise, strict workout. under proper training, under a good trainer, right? Then you become very expert athlete or cricketer or football player. So when you follow a disciplined regimen, then you acquire powers. You become expert in that area. So similarly, Amba or in the Srimad Bhagavatam and other places in the Vedic literatures, you will find so many people performing tapasya in order to gain powers. Like we know the story of Hiranyakashipu and Ravan and Kumbhakarna. These people also followed strict tapasya for several years together. And that's how they became such powerful demons. So Amba similarly is practicing certain tapasya in order to acquire powers. So she does that for a long time near the Himalayan regions. So there she meets several sages and other yogis, and she tells her problem to those people, and she asks for solutions. So they said, look, what can we do? We are all renounced yogis. We have given up family life, worldly life, and we are here practicing a spiritual life, yogic life. And you are a girl. What can we do to help you? So they said, okay. Then one of the yogis was her own maternal grandfather. So he felt very pity on Amba. And he thought, yes, your cause is right. Bhishma did not do the right thing with you. You should take revenge, or you should do something about it. What I suggest, he said, is the next day, tomorrow, the great powerful sage Parashuram is going to arrive here. So let us discuss this problem with him, and let us see what he has to say about this. So the next day, the sage Parashuram came, and all these sages presented Amba's problem, Amba's case to Parashuram. So Parashuram heard Amba's case patiently, and he thought, okay, what do you want me to do? So Amba said, you tell Bhishma to marry me. Because you are his guru, you are his teacher. If you tell him to marry me, then he may listen to your advice. So Parashuram said, okay, let me try that. So he called Bhishma. And he said, look, this girl is a young girl, innocent girl, and you have spoiled her life. Who will marry her now? So since you are the one who kidnapped her, I think you should marry her and save her life. But Bhishma said, how can I do that? That is against my principles of religion. It is my religious vow to remain a brahmachari all my life. And you are asking me to break that vow? That is impossible. But Parashuram said, that's my order. So Bhishma said, I cannot follow this order. Your order to go against my religious principle. I cannot do this. So Parashuram said, then I challenge you to fight. Fight me. If you defeat me, then it's okay. Otherwise, I will defeat you and kill you. So Bhishma thought about it for a long time and he said, okay, I accept your challenge. Although he didn't want to fight with his own teacher, Parashuram, but now it was a question between following the guru or following the religious vow he has taken. That can be a confusion in many people's life. Your superior is telling you to go against a principle that you are committed to follow. So whom to follow? Which is a superior principle? Whether I should stick to my own vows or I should follow the order of the superior who is asking me to break my vow. So these kind of complicated situations will come in everyone's life. In some cases, it could be right to follow the Guru's order. In some cases, it could be right to go against the Guru's order. If you remember the pastime of Vamanadev and Bali Maharaj, Shukracharya. So there Shukracharya was the teacher, Guru of Bali Maharaj. And Shukracharya ordered Bali, not to give anything in charity to Vamanadev. So all his life, Bali Maharaj followed Shukracharya's order. But when Vamanadev, who is the Lord himself, the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself, came in the form of a Brahman and begged for charity, then Shukracharya said, don't give in charity. So Bali Maharaj thought for a while and decided, should I follow this order or should I not? But then he decided, if it is the Supreme Lord himself, then what can be a better act than this? I should give everything in charity. In this way, Bali Maharaj disobeyed Shukracharya's order. And then we know what happened to that whole pastime. That's another story. We will discuss it some other time. So in this case, Bhishma decided to fight against Parashuram. So in this way, the fight began between Bhishma and Parashuram. It was an intense fight. So Parashuram didn't have a chariot. Bhishma said, how can I fight with you without a chariot? Parashuram said, come on, the earth is my chariot. You may get your chariot, but I don't need a chariot. In this way, both of them started fighting. Parashuram was expert warrior. Parashuram was an incarnation of the Lord, Shakti-Avesh avatar of Supreme Lord Krishna himself. And he had in the past killed the entire Kshatriya race 21 times all over the world. Because all these Kshatriyas were the adharmic rulers who were exploiting people. So this incarnation of Parashuram had specifically come to destroy all the irreligious, sinful kings. One of them was Kartivirya Arjuna, who was a very powerful king. That is a very interesting story, how Kartivirya Arjuna was killed by Parashuram. We will see that some other time. So that was Parashuram, very powerful person. And in this way, both of them began to fight. So sometimes Parashuram would defeat Bhishma. Sometimes Bhishma would defeat Parashuram. In this way, they would fight with each other. They would fall unconscious. The lot of arrows would be struck upon them. They would destroy their armors and bows and other shields and weapons. In this way, each of them was equally powerful. And no one could decide who was superior, who was inferior. And the fight continued for several days. Several days it continued. Sometimes Bhishma would gain the upper hand. Sometimes Parashuram would gain the upper hand. And the fight continued. So one day, Bhishma was struck all over his body with too many arrows and he fell unconscious. After some time, he regained consciousness, again started fighting. And another time, he released such a torrent of arrows that Parashuram almost fell unconscious. And Bhishma thought maybe he's dead. And he started crying. Oh, what a sinful act I have committed. I have killed my own teacher. But then after some time, Parashuram again got up and again continued to fight. So after several days, no one could determine who is superior, who is going to win this fight. So at that time, some celestial people, some demigods came in front of Bhishma one night, and they told him, look, tomorrow is going to be the last day of the fight between both of you. And we give you a special weapon. You use this weapon and you can easily defeat Parashuram. So Bhishma was encouraged upon hearing this. So the next day arrived and the fight began as usual. At one point of time, Bhishma took this special astra that was gifted to him by the demigods. And he fixed the arrow on his bow and chanted the right mantras. And he was about to release the arrow. And Parashuram understood, now this is going to be my end. I cannot withstand this astra. So he dropped all his weapons and he decided to retire from the fight. At that time, so Bhishma has not yet released the arrow. Okay, he just fixed the arrow and chanted the mantra. At that time, Narad Muni comes there. on the scene, and he tells Bhishma, look, you should not release this arrow. Let this fight end here, but don't release the arrow and destroy Parashuram, because this arrow can destroy Parashuram. So the demigods who had gifted the arrow to Bhishma, they also arrived there, and they told Bhishma, yes, please follow the advice of Narad Muni. Don't release the arrow. So when Bhishma heard their advice, he withdrew the arrow and did not release and did not destroy Parashuram. But Parashuram thought he's going to release. In this way, he withdrew the fight and he surrendered. He said, I lost the battle. So in this way, Bhishma emerged victorious. Or at least we can say that Parashuram was unable to defeat Bhishma after a long fight. So all this fight happened. Why? For what reason? To convince Bhishma to marry Amba. So when Parashuram failed to defeat Bhishma, he went to Amba and said, look, I tried my best to convince him, but I couldn't do anything. You saw how I tried my best, but I failed. Now you may decide what to do with your life. I cannot help you in any way. So Amba heard this and he understood that Parashuram had tried his best, but she still wanted to continue taking revenge. She still had a revengeful mood in her. And she wanted to do something so that she could kill Bhishma. But how can I do this? She thought. So she continued practicing austerities, continued practicing tapasya and intense vows. So when Ganga Devi saw this, that Amba is practicing all these austerities to kill her son Bhishma, she didn't like this idea. So she went to Amba and said, look, you should give up this idea of killing Bhishma. But Amba said, I cannot do that. He has spoiled my life. I want to kill him. So Ganga Devi felt angry towards Amba and she cursed Amba. She cursed Amba to become a river full of crocodiles. So generally, a river is very helpful for citizens of a town or city. But if it is infested with crocodiles, no one goes there. Such a river is a cursed river, very bad, abominable river. So Ganga Devi cursed Amba to become a river. But because Amba was determined, only half her body became a river, which was infested with all kinds of crocodiles. And that river flowed in some part of the land. And the other half, she remained a human being and she continued practicing austerities in order to take revenge against Bhishma. So finally, she decided she will end her life. She through her yogic powers, she generated fire within her body and she erected a funeral pyre and she jumped into the fire with the desire that let Bhishma meet his death through me. So declaring like this, she ended her life, ended her body. Before that, I forgot one point. Before that, the sages advised her to worship Lord Shiva. So she worshipped Lord Shiva and Lord Shiva came to her and she said, yes, you can kill Bhishma, but not in this life. In your next life, you will be able to kill Bhishma. So she said, but how can I kill him? He is a man and I am a woman. So Shiva says, no, you will become a man in your next life. So in this way, upon hearing this blessing, she kills her, she puts an end to her body by generating her fire. And in this way, she kills herself. So what happens to Amba in her next life? That's another story. So there was this king called Drupada. Panchal Naresh Drupad. He was the king of the land called Panchal. Draupadi was born as Draupadi and Drishtadyumna were born as his children later. So Drupada and his wife were childless for a long time, and they wanted a child, so they worshipped Lord Shiva. So Lord Shiva came before them, appeared before them, and they requested, "Let us have a son who can become the future king." So Lord Shiva said, "You will have a girl child, and she will become a man in the future." So Drupada said, "How can that happen?" So Shiva said, "Yes, that will happen. This is destined already. This girl who will appear as your child will later turn into a man." So they were surprised. But anyway, they said, "Okay, whatever you say will come true." So very soon, Drupada's wife gave birth to a child, a female child, and they named her Shikhandi. So she was a girl. But Drupada announced everywhere that a boy was born, although a girl child was born. He announced all over the kingdom that a boy was born. Because he knew Lord Shiva has said that the child is going to be a boy. So whenever that happens, he thought, why unnecessarily confuse people that a girl is born now and he's going to become a boy? Let me announce everywhere that a boy is born so that people won't be confused. Only the very close members of his kingdom, very close ministers and relatives knew the secret that this is actually a girl child. But although the child was a girl, he started giving her all kinds of training as a prince. He trained her in all kinds of martial arts and all the training that is given to a male child. And this girl grew up nicely, very powerful. She became a powerful fighter, expert in all kinds of martial arts. But none of them knew, no one knew that this is a boy. Sorry, this is a girl. Everyone thought it's a boy. So this girl grew up. Several years passed, she became an adult. And now it was time for her marriage. So whom will she marry? A girl is supposed to marry a boy. But now they have announced that she is a boy. That means she has to marry a girl. The girl Shikhandi now has to marry a girl because she is going to become a male in the future. So they announced her Swayamvar marriage, and she got married to the daughter of a king named Hiranyavarman. So Hiranyavarman had a daughter, girl. That girl was married to this girl, Shikhandi. Just imagine how things are getting complicated. So the marriage happened. No one knew that this girl is actually a girl, not a boy. They thought, the king Hiranyavarman thought, my girl is getting married to a boy. In this way, the marriage happened. Everything went fine. And the Hiranyavarman went back to his kingdom. But very soon, this girl, the daughter of Hiranyavarman, realized that my husband is not a husband. He is a woman. He is a girl. And I have been cheated royally. So she immediately went back to her father, Hiranyavarman, and told the whole thing. This is a big scandal. I got married to a girl. How can this happen? So when Hiranyavarman heard this, he got really angry and furious. He thought, I will attack the whole kingdom of Drupada and destroy the whole kingdom and kill Drupada for cheating me like this. How can he do this and spoil my daughter's life? So he immediately got his entire army and decided to attack Panchal, Drupada's kingdom. So when Drupada heard this, he got afraid. He thought, how can Lord Shiva's promise go wrong? Lord Shiva said that this girl is going to become a boy and she is still a girl. What is the mystery behind this? So he was wondering how to face the attack from Hiranyavarman's army. So all this confusion was happening in the kingdom. So meanwhile, Shikhandi, the girl, she thought, I am the cause of all these problems in my kingdom. What a cursed life I have. So let me go to the forest. If I go away, then my kingdom will be safe. My parents will be safe. So thinking in this way, she went to the forest. Inside the forest, she enters in the area of the yakshas. So who are the yakshas? Yaksha is like descendants of Kuvera. Kuvera is the king of all yakshas. And Kuvera happens to be the treasurer of the demigods. Very powerful, influential, rich person. Just imagine the accountant, finance manager of the demigods. So Yaksharaj is Kuvera, and he had his place, abode here in this forest, his palace and his area inside this forest. So Shikhandi happened to enter this area of Kuvera. And there inside the palace, he meets one Yaksha whose name was Sthuna. Sthuna Yaksha. And so Sthuna says, what happened? Why are you here? Who are you? So Shikhandi narrates the whole incident about her past life, about Bhishma, how she was born as Amba in her past life, and how now she has become Shikhandi, and how Shiva had promised that she will become a man. And she was married to this girl of Hiranyavarman, and now they are attacking my capital city, kingdom. What can I do? I don't know what to do. So the Yaksha heard all this, and he felt pity towards Shikhandi. So he thought, what can I do? What can I do to help you? So Shikhandi said, you can't help me. Like, there's no way to help me. But Yaksha said, okay, I can do something. We can do one thing. Let us exchange our gender. So now I am a man, you are a girl. Let us exchange. You become a man and I will become a woman. Now let this be temporary arrangement, not permanently. Let this be temporary. For 1 month maybe. So once you become a man, once we exchange our genders, you go back to your kingdom and inform everyone that I am a man. I am not a woman. That was just a rumor. You can say like that. So Shikhandi hears this idea and he says, okay. She feels grateful towards the Yaksha. And in this way, the Yaksha does something by which they exchange their gender. So the Stuna Yaksha became a woman and Shikhandi becomes a man. And Shikhandi becomes very happy, at least for the time being, the problem is solved. So she goes back to the kingdom, capital, Drupada's capital, and she announces to everyone, look, I have become a man. I am a man. I am not a woman. So by the time the army of Hiranyavarman has already reached and they are about to attack, but Drupada goes and tells him, look, who said your daughter got married to a woman? Look, my son is a son, male. Shikhandi is a male. Who said she is a female? So they do a gender testing, gender examination, and they confirm that yes, Shikhandi is a male. Somehow this news came that the Shikhandi was female, but now it is confirmed that she is a male. He is a male. She or he, whatever you want to say. My husband is a male. So everything is now settled. Everyone is happy and peaceful and joyful that there is no confusion. Hiranyavarman is happy. He takes back his army back to his kingdom and everything is settled. So the daughter is also happy. So now Shikhandi, the contract was signed only for a few days, few weeks maybe. So she feels now I have to go back to the Yaksha in the forest and give him back his gender. So meanwhile, in the forest, during this period of 1 month, a few days, when the Yaksha had become a woman and Shikhandi had become the man, Kuvera, who happened to be the king of the Yakshas, he comes there for a retreat, for a picnic. And he's going over this place and he says, okay, this is my place, let me come down and spend some time here in my abode, my palace. So he comes down and he's waiting for someone to welcome him. He's wondering why no one is coming to welcome me. I have so many people here, but no one is coming. So then some people come there and inform Kuvera that the Yaksha, who is your representative here, Sthuna, this is what happened to him. He has become a woman. And they explain the whole story, what happened. So when Kuvera heard this, he got angry. He says, what kind of fool you are? How could you do this? How could you exchange your gender with someone or some unknown person? You are such a fool. So Kuvera cursed this Yaksha, Sthuna, and says, may you remain a woman permanently. So the Yaksha Sthuna got really sad, really disappointed. He said, I did this to help someone genuinely, but now I got cursed for some good act that I did. What a miserable life is mine. So all the assistants of this Yaksha request Kuvera, please do something. Please withdraw your curse. What is the solution to this problem? So Kuvera says, okay, I can do something. This contract will remain permanent until Shikhandi is alive. When Shikhandi is dead, this Yaksha Sthuna will again become a man. Until then, Shikhandi will remain a man and this Yaksha will remain a woman. So that's what happened at the Yaksha's place. So after some time, when Shikhandi comes back to express her gratitude and exchange the gender in order to become a woman back again, she understands the whole thing, what happened here. So the Sthuna Yaksha says, look, it seems this is destiny. I am destined to remain a woman for your entire lifetime, and you will remain a man until you are dead. So when Shikhandi heard this, she became very happy that she is now a man, and now she can take her revenge against Bhishma, which was the purpose of her life. So in this way, Shikhandi becomes a permanent man. Sthuna was cursed by Kuvera to become a woman, and Shikhandi understands this. Now she becomes a permanent man. So this Shikhandi becomes a very powerful warrior. She was already trained before that. He becomes a very powerful warrior, expert in all the martial skills and arts, and he is waiting for the opportunity to kill Bhishma. So this Shikhandi becomes the main person who kills Bhishma during the Mahabharata war. That's another story. We will see that later. So this story of Shikhandi and Amba is actually narrated by Bhishma. When does he narrate this? Before the war. He narrates this story to all the Kauravas. How he is going to fight the war, how he is going to kill everyone. But Bhishma said, I will not lift my weapon if someone is running away from the battlefield or if a woman comes in front of me. If a woman challenges me, then I will not fight. This is Bhishma telling to all the Kauravas. So he said, Shikhandi, although he is now a man, he was born a woman. Therefore, if he challenges me in the fight, then I won't fight. Because my vow is that I won't fight with a woman. And I consider Shikhandi to be a woman, although he is now in the body of a man. because he was born a girl, born a woman. So Shikhandi challenges me, I will not fight. So when Kauravas heard all these things, they really admired Bhishma, and they listened to him out of respect. So that's another discussion. But this is what happened to Amba, and this is how she became the main enemy of Bhishma. So that shows Bhishma's determination. Although he was challenged by Parashuram himself, his own teacher, Bhishma remained fixed in his vow as a celibate brahmachari, and he was so powerful that even Parashuram couldn't defeat him. And look at Amba. What do we learn from Amba's story? Her whole purpose of life was to kill Bhishma, take revenge against Bhishma. So with that desire, she performed so many austerities, so many tapasya, so many vows she took. So in the Gita also Krishna says, Yam yam vapis maran bhavam tyajatyante kalevaram. Whatever state of being we remember at the time of death, throughout our life, and especially at the time of death, that state of being we will attain in your next life. So throughout our life, what are the impressions and memories that we collect in our life? That is very important. What are the desires we cultivate in our life? That is very important. All these accumulated impressions and images, memories and desires, cumulatively, will decide what kind of thoughts we have at the time of death. And that will decide what we become in our next life. So just like we prepare for exams, right? We have our semester and terms. Throughout the term, throughout the year, we prepare all the subjects. We memorize certain things. We perform practicals and experiments and assignments. How sincerely, seriously we do all those things, that will decide. How sincerely we study, memorize things, that will decide how much we are able to reproduce at the time of examination. If you have studied well, if you have memorized well, if you have understood everything well, then we can clearly reproduce everything in the examination answer sheet. But if we have not studied nicely, if we have not submitted our assignments nicely, homework nicely, then we are unable to write properly the answers in the answer sheet during the examination. So death is like the examination paper. Now, what are the things you are going to reproduce at the time of the exam? That will depend on what all I have studied and memorized and remembered, what all impressions I have accumulated throughout my life. If all those impressions are positive, then what I am going to write, what I am going to remember at the time of death will be positive. And my next life destination will be positive and auspicious. But if I have accumulated negative impressions, negative memories, negative desires, then that's what I'm going to reproduce at the time of death. And accordingly, I will have a inauspicious destination, negative life, abominable life in my next life. So therefore, according to Vedic scriptures, our entire life should be aimed towards preparation for an exam. That's very important. Life is not simply meant to be wasted in enjoyment. Enjoyment is important, not that we shouldn't enjoy at all, but that enjoyment shouldn't happen at the cost of enlightenment. Enjoyment and enlightenment should happen together. Only enjoyment without enlightenment is destructive. So therefore, we have to be careful. What do we do? What are the desires I am cultivating in this life? What are the memories I am cultivating in this life? What am I watching? What am I hearing? What am I doing? What am I remembering? What am I hearing? What am I tasting, smelling? All these things. Every activity of our senses, eyes, ears, nose, touch, and smell. When we interact with the world with these senses, it creates an impression in our mind. So just imagine how many impressions we are accumulating every day, day after day, year after year. All these impressions will accumulate once together and will create a cumulative impression at the time of death. And that will decide our next life. So we have to be careful. What all things that I'm watching? What all things I'm hearing, tasting, smelling, touching? So that's a serious spiritual practitioner. Therefore, we have to choose right things over the wrong things, and in this way, this life will be auspicious, and our next life will also be auspicious. So that's what we understand from Amba's story. There is life after death also. Her desire was to kill Bhishma, so that desire was fulfilled in her next life. She wanted to become a man. That desire was fulfilled by becoming Shikhandi in her next life. So these are all very subtle topics, which is elaborated in much greater detail in the Bhagavad Gita and other Srimad Bhagavatam scriptures. But that's how Shikhandi's history is there. Bhishma, how his fate was decided. Although his father had blessed him to leave his body anytime, but his defeat happened through Shikhandi. Shikhandi became an instrument towards his death. Okay, so that's the story of Shikhandi and Bhishma. Let us stop here. It's 12 o'clock. Any thoughts or questions, comments anyone wants to share? Let us take them for a few minutes. Someone has raised their hands. Please speak up.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, is my voice audible?
Yes, very audible.
Prabhuji, I have a question that the science is again and again saying that the Vedic is wrong and it's not right. We are choosing it, but it's not right because it's saying first of all it was saying that meditation doesn't think exist, but now science is saying that meditations, yoga, it is all benefit for us, and it was first discovered in the Vedas. So why then also with the proof that the Vedas are the right source of knowledge, then also why it is saying that Vedas are wrong science?
Why the scientists are saying the Vedas are wrong, right? That's the question, right?
Yes, because now in the Vedas they say that meditation is very useful for our health. It makes our brain clear and we can thought very clearly. But then also scientists say that it's not right, and now they have discovered that yoga
Correct.
is benefit for our health.
Yeah, that's a
So
good
slowly
point
they
you have
are
raised.
discovering what are.
Yes. Now they're slowly discovering what was already mentioned in our scriptures long back. Yeah, that's the unfortunate condition with today's modern scientists. They want to experimentally prove according to their own methods what is right and what is wrong. So Prabhupada used to say that all the research has already been done and the conclusions are already presented in our Vedic literatures. All we have to do is accept them as it is. So we don't have to waste our time again doing the same research and coming to the same conclusion. That will save so much time. Just imagine if we would have accepted all the Vedic conclusions without argument in the beginning itself, we save so much time. Just like, for example, if I have to go from Bombay to Pune, which is a 3-hour journey by car. Now, I may not know how to go, which road to take, which left turn, right turn to take. If I say, no, the solution is I refer to a map. I refer to Google Map, or I take a friend along with me who knows the road, who knows the way, and he will guide me. how to go. But if I say, no, I am not going to take anyone's help, I am not going to refer to Google Map or any other map, I will do research and I will find out my way to the destination. Now you may do it, but it will take so much time. You will spend long hours. Instead of reaching the destination in 3 hours, you may take 15 hours to reach Pune, because you are doing research. If you would have referred to a map, then the map would have guided you so easily. So the Vedic scriptures are like a map, road map to life. And the people who have researched it, they have mentioned all these conclusions and presented it in the Vedic literatures. We don't have to waste our time unnecessarily trying to prove the same things again, which have already been proved. So that's the unfortunate condition about the scientists. Somehow they don't have faith in the literatures. Just like I having no faith in my friend, or I having no faith in the Google Maps. So that's all tried and tested methods. So that's the unfortunate condition. And somehow, if we can prove to these scientists how the Vedic statements are scientific, it is not just blind faith, it is not just dogmatic statements that are mentioned there. If we can prove this nicely to the scientists, then maybe they will change. And that's unfortunate about modern Indians also. Even modern Indians don't have faith in the Vedic literatures. They also blindly follow what the scientists say. And the scientists' opinion keep changing every now and then. They may say something today, oh, corona is caused by this virus, corona is caused by this problem because vitamin D is deficient and this and that. And after a few weeks, they will say some other research. Oh, that is what is causing corona. And that is what is causing second infection and third infection. So they let us come up with this vaccine. And we don't know whether the vaccine is going to work. It may work for a few days, few weeks, or a few months. And then they may say, oh, no, actually, we are still doing a research and now we are coming up with something new. So in this way, their research continues and they keep making money from the taxpayers' amount. And we stupid people, we put faith in these scientists and we miss out the goal of life. All right. Any other thing? Anyone else want to say anything? Someone has raised their hand. Riyansh has said, I have a doubt. Are you here, Riyansh? And Ishwari also. Yes. We can't hear you. Mataji, can you unmute them? Riyansh and Ishwari? One second, let me see if I can unmute. I'm not sure.
Ishwari, you're unmuted, darling. And Ishwari.
Yes, Mataji. Prabhuji, you can hear me?
Yes.
Yes, Prabhuji. So basically, I didn't understand. Like in the starting, you had said that Amba, she because of penances, half her body was a human, and the other half because of Ganga Devi's curse, she became. She had a crocodile lake river. I didn't understand what exactly means half body is this, half body is that. Meaning.
Yeah, the details are also not mentioned clearly, but that's what they say in the Mahabharata, that a human aspect of her existence continued to live, and a part of her existence became a river, became a crocodile infested river. So not that the entire she entirely became a river. Some aspect of her human existence continued, which wanted to take revenge against Bhishma. And then she worshipped Lord Shiva, and then Lord Shiva blessed her, and those things happened. The details are not mentioned there. Yes. Okay.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Yeah, just 1 second, Riyan. Just hang on 1 second. Yes. What's your question?
Prabhuji, did Amba was anytime killed when she was in the Shikandi body?
Yes. Shikhandi was killed later. After the fight with Bhishma, after Bhishma fell on the battlefield, after some days, I think Shikhandi died. I think on the 18th day. I'm not very sure. I'll have to check again. But Shikhandi also died in the war towards the end. I think it was 18th day when Ashwatthama killed everyone. Maybe I'll have to check. Okay, Mamta, you have a doubt?
Guruji.
Yes.
The Lord was decided to who want to live this live. This time and this time is he dead.
I don't think I understood your question. The Lord decides what? Who will live and who will die? That's your question?
Yes, Guruji. The Lord will decide our life for Guruji.
Yes, our life is fixed to some extent. The amount of duration we are going to spend in this life, that is fixed. And we have to utilize our lifetime. How much suffering, how much enjoyment we are going to enjoy, face, experience in this life, that is also fixed to a great extent. The main events are fixed. We have some things which are in our control, but certain things are fixed. So those things that are fixed, we cannot change. But things that are in our control, we have to utilize our freedom properly and achieve better results, create a future proper destiny. So how we respond in this life decides our future, decides our destiny in the next life, or even in this life also. Yes, that is also true. Anything else?
Anybody want to ask next?
Okay, Mamata. Yes.
It was a wonderful class. So, Prabhuji, I had a question that when Bhishma told this to the Kauravas and Bhishma also know this. So, when the fight was going, so how was Shikhandi the main purpose because of the death or means the defeat of Bhishma because Arjun had thrown the arrow on Bhishma, no?
Yes.
So how can he be?
Yeah, I got the question. So when the fight was going on, the 10th day of the war out of the 18 days, so till the 9th day, Bhishma was creating a lot of damage on the Pandava army, and they didn't know how to stop Bhishma, how to defeat Bhishma. So Yudhishthira and the Pandavas wondered, what can we do to stop this. So then Yudhishthir decides to go and ask Bhishma himself. That's the interesting part. So he goes to Bhishma and requests Bhishma, please tell me, how can we defeat you? So this is interesting. This is typical Kshatriya war. You go to your enemy camp fearlessly and request the opponent, how I can kill you. Similar thing happened with Dronacharya also. So Bhishma says, okay, now that you have come, I'll tell you the secret, how you can defeat me. What you should do is, let Arjun challenge me and he should keep Shikhandi in front of him. And my vow is, if a woman is standing in front of me, I will not shoot, I will not fight. So that's what Arjun did. He would keep Shikhandi in front of him and Shikhandi would challenge Bhishma and Bhishma would not respond to that challenge because he considered him a woman. And Arjun kept on shooting arrows. So Shikhandi also kept on shooting arrows, but Arjun's arrows were far more powerful and forceful than the arrows of Shikhandi. So the arrows that Shikhandi was shooting, it hardly gave any pain to Bhishma. But the arrows that Arjun was shooting towards Bhishma, those were the arrows that actually penetrated his body and made him fall. So that's how Bhishma got defeated. Voluntarily he got defeated because Shikhandi became the instrument indirectly. Not that Shikhandi defeated Bhishma, but Bhishma just chose not to fight with him. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, that was a nice point. Any other question, any other point?
Naman, please unmute yourself.
So, Prabhuji, I had a question about the Lord's avatars. So, why does the Lord come himself on the earth, and why doesn't he send his assistants every time? Because his assistants and his army is also enough to defeat the demons. Why does he come himself?
Nice point. Why does Krishna come himself? Why can't he just manage with his assistants and armies? That's what he does most of the time. Many of the times he sends his assistants, through the demigods, through his assistants, through prophets, through messengers. He gets his job done oftentimes. But sometimes when the situation is too serious, he feels I should come personally. That's when Krishna decides to come. Every time you can't delegate, right? You can just keep telling your assistant, you do my job, you do my job. Then what will I do? Sometimes I also have to do something. I may have a lot of assistants to help me, but occasionally at least during important times, I should do the job personally. Other times I can ask my assistants and delegate the job to them. So just like when Prahlad was tortured by Hiranyakashipu, Narsimhadev felt, this is too much. I have to personally handle this case. Or when in the Krishna Leela, you find Brahmaji and the Bhumi Devi approaching Lord Vishnu and requesting Lord Vishnu, please help. So many demons are torturing, Bhumi Devi said. So then Lord Vishnu said, yes, I will very soon come in the form of Krishna and destroy all these demons. So that's one reason Krishna likes to come and serve his devotees. Krishna is called Bhakta Vatsala. Bhakta Vatsal means he is the protector and very affectionate towards his devotees. So many times he wants to personally protect his devotees. He takes pleasure in protecting his devotees personally. Just like suppose a child is in danger, then what the father or mother will do? They will want to personally come and protect the child, right? They won't say, oh, you servant, please take care of my child. Oh, you assistant, your neighbor or relative, please take care of my child. Other things the neighbors and relatives and friends and assistants can do. Say, for example, the child needs some food or some other thing, some help, some studies, other things, the parents may delegate. They may keep tuition teachers, or they may have some assistants who can take care of the child's other needs. But if the life of the child is in danger, then the parents, mother or father, will personally come there and protect the child, right? They won't delegate it to someone else. That's what Krishna does. When they see my devotees are in danger and only I can do them, I can protect them. So then he personally takes avatar. And in this way, Krishna reciprocates with his devotee. And when the devotee sees Krishna personally coming to protect him or her, then the loving affection between the devotee and Krishna increases to an intense level. And that's how devotional service continues. That's the fuel that fires, the fuel that increases the fire of bhakti. So that's why Krishna personally comes. Otherwise, he can manage everything through his assistants. That is a nice point. Naman, right? Naman Pandey. Anyone else wants to share? We have a few more minutes left.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
I have one more doubt, Prabhuji. If Shantanu Maharaj, when he was in the heavens, he knew the rule that the opposite sex is not, it's a bad thing. So why did also he think about Ganga Devi? He knew the rules. Then also why he did so?
Okay, so simply knowledge of rules is not enough to stop you from doing the wrong thing. I know so many rules, but still we break the rule, right? Oftentimes, I know I should not break the traffic rule. I know I should not do so many wrong things, but still sometimes we are tempted. I know I should not look here. I know I should not eat this. I know I should not do this. The parents tell us, our superiors, elders tell us, don't do this. But still we think, arey yaar, koi dekh nahi raha hai, let me do this. Hai ki nahi? So that's how happened with Shantanu. Although he knew everything, the etiquette, the proper code of conduct, but somehow it happened. He happened to stare at Ganga Devi in an improper way. And therefore he had to get the reaction. So everyone commits mistakes. Mistakes happen to everyone. And a small punishment, small rectification, that's okay. He didn't have to suffer eternally. Only one lifetime he had to come down. And then he was back again. Okay. Subhadra has raised her hand.
Prabhuji, I have a doubt that how can the demigods give Bhishma the astra, special astra to destroy Parshuram? He is the incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
Why they did that? You'll have to ask them. But somehow they felt Bhishma's cause is worthy and Bhishma is doing the right thing. So they thought maybe they are friends with the Ashtavasus. Ashtavasus are also demigods. Bhishma happened to be one of the Ashtavasus. So they thought, let us support Bhishma. So they came and then they offered. But when then Narad Muni came, they understood that probably this is not right. So they followed Narad Muni's advice. So that's there. Always you will have parties. I'll support this. Whenever there is a match, you will support one party, one team, right? We all have affection towards one team, one party. So somehow the demigods felt this cause is right. So let us support Bhishma by offering this astra. But then later they realized that was not right. And they also advised Bhishma that you should follow Narad Muni's advice to not release the astra. So that kind of thing happens everywhere. Anyone else want to say anything?
I think we're quite sorted, Prabhuji, for today.
Okay.
Thank you. Very nice session.
So thank you everyone for joining us today and asking some very nice, intelligent questions. And we will see next time how the story continues, how Vichitravirya marries the other two queens, and how they have their children, and how we are entering into the main Kuru family, the main scene, gradually. Okay, so thank you once again. We will meet next time. Hare Krishna.